In January 1986, sisters Aili Lake and Lillian Mattson sat down at the home of their cousin, Lydia Hogan, where Lydia recorded them discussing their childhood and memories growing up in the Aitkin-Rossberg area. Sophia Olli was the first of the Olli siblings to leave Finland for America. At the age of 16, she left Finland in 1901 and went to New York, where she lived with her cousin, Maria Kujala Manilin, shown left in this picture. Sophia was employed as a piano teacher's housekeeper. She worked in New York until 1908, when she left to join her sister Julia Olli Leppänen in Niemi, Michigan. Julia Olli had left Finland for Niemi, Michigan, where she had met and married Bill Leppänen. When joining her sister in Michigan, Sophia met and married Abel Niemi, and their first child, Lillian, was born there. In 1912, with the promise of land, Abel, Sophia, and Lillian moved to Aitkin, Minnesota. In 1918, enticed by Sophia's account, the Heitkins and Lepänens also moved to Aitkin. The Niemis got to Aitkin in 1912. 2 years later, their second daughter, Aili, was born in 1914. When the Lepänens arrived in 1918, their daughter, Vienno, was almost 6 years old. The Heitkins came shortly after them, and they arrived with their two children, Anto and Anya, and then gave birth to 10 more children while they were in Aitkin. The early years for these families were marked with hardship. They used their skills to farm, hunt, preserve food, weave, sew, and build their own homes. The men, Abel Niemi, Bill Leppänen, and Gus Heitkinen, all went to work in the mines in Crosby, Minnesota, about 30 miles away, and returned when they could to help their families at home. These three families worked together to survive and support each other. You will hear excerpts of an audio tape of Lillian Mattson and her sister Aili Lake reminiscing about growing up.
And 87, my goodness, I think we're all getting old over here since I was born in December 1914. Well, anyway, Lydia called to come over here for coffee. We sat and had coffee, and then she played some tapes, and she asked us to talk about what I remember. Well, I remember when Leppänes came from Niemi, Michigan with a big Maxwell car, touring car, but the roof was put down, and we were living in a little log house over there where I was born, and we got out in front there. There was Lillian and I and Diana. We were sitting there and looking at her beautiful button shoes. They were above the ankle tight, and she had a ribbon in her hair, and she had a beautiful dress on, and those shiny button shoes, and oh, how we looked at them. We couldn't understand how come we didn't have button shoes like her. We just couldn't believe it. But then wait till we got up from there after we played in the sand for a while. It didn't go over very well with the mothers, because I guess we got our hind end warmed up a little bit.
The Heitkins, Niemis, and Lepänens all lived about a mile from each other across swamps as the crow flies. Rossberg was the nearest train station, but was still a 5-mile walk to the Heitkins' house. There were many Finnish families living in this area, including Lidbergs, Laukkanens, Seilos, Koskalas, Seppelas, and more. Lillian was the eldest of all of the Minnesota Olli children. She was born in 1909. Vienno Leppänen was born in 1912. Anto Heitkinen was born in 1913. And Aili Niemi was born in 1914. All of these cousins were very close in age and lived and worked together as a one family.
Sunday, and he took the horses and fed the sleigh with hay, and then he'd start from home, and there was me, Leppänen and Vienno, and then he'd come our way and picked Mother and Lillian and I up, and we were all sitting around with the sleigh over there. Then we cut across the meadow over there where so-called Albert Lidberg, out there with those fir trees. And never in my life before had I seen beard on trees, or so-called, well, we call them whiskers. And I remember we used to reach out, and the boughs used to fall over the sled, and we used to pull on those things. And Mr. Leppänen finally said, "Don't pull so hard, you're going to go right along with them, because the branches aren't going to give way." We had a lapful of that moss, and then we got boots and stuff on them, and we went into the house working. But the most of all, I remember very, very well when they first moved over there, and they had that little two-room house that was covered with tar paper, and then they raised some geese on there, and in the fall the geese always used to love to come to tear the tar paper up, and Mr. Aitkin used to say, he said, those darn geese is that they can't leave the house alone. They're going to move in with us. And then they had a little way out in their yard, they had an old log barn. It was very low, and it was, I believe, that thing would have housed about 6-7 head of cattle, besides, the horses were included in there. It was made out of round copper logs, and it had a little upstairs in there that was packed with hay, and I always remember all the leftovers from the house were brought upstairs in that barn hayloft over there. And then after a while, they built a building over there by the house. They called it their granary, where they, if they butchered in the fall, they had their meat in there, and they had their grain in there, and they had leftover clothes that didn't fit in the house. They were hanging over there in there too. Yeah, gosh, it used to take, because I don't remember that at all. It's only that I remember them in dictionaries and books. It used to take me, and he bought me on his knees. Perän kirkkoon Pappilamuorin penkkiin, ruskealla ruunalla valkoisella varsalla. Ja pyömbän paukkaa, jänisvettössä laukkaa, kultakuppi kainalassa, hopiaisessa nausassaan. Seri se, tikan poika kylvi tiellä nauriin, tuliko ihan talonpoika, söi sen tikan nauriin. And those were the three favorites. I didn't remember that one. He used to do, and then he'd sing quite a little bit, and I always remember him, he was smoking his, he usually had a pipe, usually always, and I used to trump, and they used to go give hay for the cows, so I used to trump behind them and go in the barn over there, and he told me to stand in the corner over there while he was giving hay for the cows, and then we'd come back together again. So I guess that's about it. Now Lillian can.
Siumpaan paukkaa, jäänyt metsässä laukka. Poron kellot kaulasta, ilon annottu naulasta. Siumpaan paukkaa, jäänyt metsässä laukka. Poron kellot kaulasta, ilon annottu naulasta.
Videos and flights, and I just go back to recalling a little bit of the days with Grandma. Olli had died in Finland, and like Aili said, we took that day too. It was a Sunday, and Mrs. Leppänen had gotten word that Grandma Olli had died in Finland, and I believe she was only 59 years old, and so Mr. Leppänen harnessed the horses that Sunday. And there was the black horse that Mother had, Dad had raised. Gosse was one of them. I don't recall the other horse. And through that same woods and swamps, through Arthur Swanson's, we came up there. And we were on, Mother and Aili and I and Mr. and Mrs. Leppänen and I supposed piano. And they went to tell the word to Grandma Judy and Grandpa that Grandma Olli had died in Finland. And they were very much saddened by the news. And Mother had a dream ahead of that time.
Yes, she had a dream.
Yeah, about that birch tree going back to Lafayette. And she said, well, who has made that big hole there and
tore Grandma's
Grandma's tree down? Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And then she had the dream that there was coming a team of black horses to tell the news that Grandma is dead. And she said when she saw you guys coming with that team of horses, it was a black team of horses. She said her heart just stopped. She knew that right away that it was bad news.
Yeah. It was bad news. Yes, I remember going. Lillian was
Lillian was our horse, and Gosse was the one that they raised.
And I suppose they had one horse, and Grandma had one horse.
Yeah, I had in my diary one of Mother had green here a few years back, and she said that she had planted a garden with the best of seed. And she said something went in there like tearing everything apart. And she said, are you the devil that I have planted good seed in here? And now you're tearing it apart, just like she was worrying about her own families, you know.
Oh, yeah.
But I was going to say once more about that haying business.
December 28, 1909, only things I can recall is the hardships of life, which of them was many. And I think the younger generation, how hard they have it, they'll never have it like we do. We had to carry wood in, and we had to put oil in the lamps and the lanterns, and there was no electricity and no bathrooms, and there was so much work to do. And I recall it, Grandma.
The Niemi, Leppänen, and Aitkin children all lived nearby, and grew up together as one family working together to make sure that everyone survived many hardships.
Sent milk too, went there every few days to get their groceries. And she sent canned beef and I don't remember what, but rutabagas, God's rutabagas.
But did you make a hole in the ground and put the stuff?
And we went down the back to Rice River, and there was then the Rice River water was very low, but we made a hole in the sand, and in the bottom of the sand came a little water. That was our refrigerator.
Yeah. And that's so right. You must have had the stuff in tight jars.
Yeah, we had
canned
beef in
tight.
2-quart jars. In the spring, we would butcher at Mother's a pig or something, and we canned, and we made meatballs and all kinds of meat. And I think your mother had the same thing.
And we had canned fish, sucker fish.
Suckers and
fish. We put a little vinegar in there and put some salt in there.
And salmon. And that time we were making hay late in the season. I was expecting Marilyn already a little bit, and I had morning sickness. I remember stirring up a cake and going to the Rossberg meadows then, and then Gus was always cooking that stew with that meat, and he was putting rutabaga in there, and that rutabaga to me, he liked rutabaga and potatoes, I don't know what we put in there, carrots. They were home-raised food, vegetables, and Gus was always putting rutabagas in with that canned meat. We were cooking stew there. And I learned to hate rutabaga in stew then because it still smells bad to me. Then Aunt Julia, and then of course Aunt Selma and Mother, all three of them, when they were at the coffee table at Rapid Lake, their minds, and Huck was all in Finland, so we know pretty much all the relations here because the older generation, because they were always the top went to Finland. That was the country they loved so well from where they had left.
Lillian met Arvo Mattson, and they were married on January 15th, 1933.
I have lost interest in life. He said, Gus is gone, and I still have to cry. He said, Gus is gone, and he lost all interest in life because they used to chat together so many times. They came over at least once a week, and they would have nice visits together. Talking mostly of the past and some into the future of farming, which I remember reading Rose when the kids at my house were smaller, because I'm the oldest one. I am 10 years older than Aunt Lydia, your mother Lydia, Sherry's mother. And I recall we put a big rose out there for them on a Sunday when Gus tried to raise rutabagas to sell. I don't remember the price. Per ton, he tried to raise rutabagas to sell. I don't remember the price per ton. He tried to raise rutabagas even to sell to get money and keep it in existence.
Then they had to haul it all the way to Aitkin.
Yes, and haul it all the way to Aitkin with the horse. And I remember being at Rossberg Meadow the summer of 1935 east of Hasman Junction out there in the meadows. And there, we had a lot of gardeners home, and he brought me the biggest muskmelons there. And he had been selling them in town for 25 cents a piece. Great big muskmelons, and they were sweet.
Is that something that we could raise watermelon and muskmelon then? I could remember when in the fall,
watermelons up to 25 pounds.
When your folks picked up a load of stuff, which included rutabagas, raspberries, potatoes, and other garden stuff. I think there were some tomatoes, and went to town with a load of vegetables, and then traded it in for shoes.
Yeah.
Mostly shoes and stockings, and not so much coats or that stuff.
Mother
make our coats from somebody's old coat. Yeah. And
so this is just a story of talking about hardship of the olden days, but of course he had the team of horses, and he was then wanting to have a cup of coffee, and there's snow. That winter we had quite a bit of snow, but it was very cold. And Gus said, let's stop in the poplar woods, it's a little warmer there. And he had some kind of a pan, and they made a little fire out of poplar branches, and he took some snow from the ground. It was pretty deep, a couple feet deep there, and he took some snow into the pan and started melting it, and that coffee, there's going to cook coffee, and there was some rabbit turds in there. I recall there was at least 3, and Grandpa Gus just picked them out, the rabbit turds from water that had melted from the snow. And he said, well, they can be more nutritious now, and that's what put coffee in, and we had coffee there. And we always had sandwiches along, and of course then over the fire we kind of tried to melt them because the sandwiches were kind of
came to meet us and left, and then we took the horses out and put them so they ate the hay from the sled box, and they had a little oats and stuff on them, and we went into the house. Then after a little bit, Miss Aitkin brewed a whole big pot of coffee over there, and we all had something to eat, and we stayed in there. And then after a while, we were dressed up, and we went skiing down on their hills, and we went sliding down on their hills. And of course, Rex Smith, we went across the road over there where Smith lived, and Rex had a pony over there, and he had a sled, and he used to hitch up that thing over there, and then to give the girls a ride on there, we used to ride on our sled. I believe it was a sled most of the time because it was in the winter time, and up and down the road we'd go, and we just had a lot of fun. And then Mrs. Smith used to feed us some hot
Roger was born, and she said that if we lose our farm now, it ain't going to be my fault, she said. I have tried for all I'm worth. And that year they had the first turkeys, 500 of them, and they made enough money to pay the payment on the farm, which I don't know if it was one of the last ones.
It must have been about close to the last,
close to the last or something, because she was so sad if they lose their farm after they had paid for it for so many years. And that time then also she got her set of teeth, front teeth, upper teeth, which she hadn't had teeth for at least 2 years. So that was a bright spot in their life, and they got.
When Lillian talks about surviving hardship, she really meant it. In the late 1930s, Minnesota crops were devastated by hordes of grasshoppers that came because of record dry weather and hot weather conditions in Minnesota, and that lasted for almost 10 years. Minnesota faced severe agricultural and ecological damage during the 30s Dust Bowl. Unprecedented drought, relentless heat, turned farm fields into loose dirt and dried up local lakes. These families persevered under relentlessly hard conditions. In 1935, Mattson's first child, Marilyn, was born. That same year, Heitman's youngest child, Roger, was born. In this picture, Floyd and Lydia Hogan serve as godparents for Marilyn Mattson at her baptism. This picture is with Lillian and Arvo Mattson and a minister of the Finnish Apostolic Lutheran Church. In 1937, Aili Niemi married Andrew Lake, and they also made their home at a farm in Aitkin.
now lost